Hello, fabulous fempreneurship guests. We have a very different topic today. It's You Are Limitless. And our guest today is Laura Lohk from Poole, Dorset, England. So welcome to our show, Laura. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Oh,
Pleasure.
you're very, very welcome. So before we get started, our listeners would love to hear a little bit about your story. If you could give us some highlights.
Yes, absolutely. So, Elaine said, my name is Laura. I'm originally from a small country called Estonia. It's a very small country in East Europe. I was born there. I grew up there, and then I moved to the UK when I was 19. My background was very much working with communities and empowering people in communities. And then I went on to actually study to become a lawyer. So I have 12 years of legal experience. And I worked my way up into management. So I have management and managerial experience. But just before I kind of qualified, even though I had been working as a manager already, I realized that wasn't quite what I wanted to do. So I went and retrained actually as a cognitive hypnotherapist and NLP master practitioner. And in 2018, actually opened my own therapy and coaching practice. And I helped mainly females with their sort of mental health and well-being, confidence, various things like that. And during COVID, obviously my business completely disappeared because I wasn't allowed to see people face to face. And by that time, I really started to enjoy working with entrepreneurs. And I retrained in sort of business coaching. And I had a business coaching business. And now actually, not so long ago, I put my business together with a consulting business. So now I'm in a sort of a part of a much bigger business community where we help entrepreneurs and business owners actually grow their business. So we are all about empowering business owners to really succeed.
Well, that's fabulous. You certainly got a lot of experience in many different areas. Kudos to you. So, what would you say that statement, you are limitless mean to you? And what are four aspects of being limitless?
Yeah, so sort of the sort of limitless aspect has kind of grown out of my background of going through a lot of struggles when I was a child. So, for example, there was a period of time when I was homeless, and all of the stuff that I've learned along the way, and the You Are Limitless story was one of the public speaking pieces that I did not so long ago. So what it really means for me is really what it says on a tin, effectively, you are limitless. Because what I've found, especially working with a lot of women, that we kind of get stuck into what a kind of society tells us what we should be doing. Like you go to school, then you go to uni, then you get married, then you have kids. And, when you are a child, your mind is limitless. You're like, I want to be an astronaut. This is my dream. I want to climb a mountain, whatever it is. But then we get stuck into this box and we completely forget who we truly are, because, all the other stuff are kind of confining us. So that kind of what limitless means for me is truly doing what you truly want to do, instead of living in somebody else's dream and somebody else's life. So during my talk, there was quite a lot of personal stories that I shared over the years that I've learned. But for me, there are sort of four aspects that make somebody limitless. It's an utter desire, not taking advice about your dreams, feel the fear and do it anyway, and strengthening your foundation. These are the kind of four aspects for me.
Yeah, you're so right though that sometimes society pushes down and your dreams go away, right? Because
Mm.
um you know you're following a norm. Do you think now though that women have broken out a little bit from the box that they've been put in and follow their dreams more?
I think the sort of new generation, and by by new generation, I'm talking about the Gen Z and or Gen Z, and maybe the newer generation that coming on, but certainly still, you know, in my generation and older generation, you know, I'm 37 now, and I'm just looking at my sort of friendship groups, and obviously the clients that I've had in the past and the clients that I have now, they are still very much, when I ask them, what do you truly want from your life, or what's important to you in your life, they only talk about their friends or their family or their kids. And these are obviously very, very important. But if you take them off, what's actually important to you as a person,
Yeah.
leaving, because obviously family is important, friends are important, your kids are important,
Mm-hmm.
but they still forget them as a person.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it does take courage to break out and
Mm,
examine what you want as a person and go after that, because it may
yeah.
be so completely different than the life that you are living at the moment. And how do you do that without losing what you already have? Like, say you are married and have two children. I was in that situation too, but that wasn't enough for me. And I
Mm,
knew that I wanted to do more. So, but you have to work with your partner because it's not just your life, it's your family
mm,
life as well.
mhm,
So they do have to be on board with you if at all possible, because you can't do it by yourself. You have to have some kind of support group to help you.
totally.
And that's what I did. I went back to university when I had two little kids. I had a 1 year old and a 4 year old.
Mm,
Well, that's not easy to do when you're leaving the house in the evening because
mm,
they did the whole thing at nighttime and you got a screaming 1 year old, you know,
mm,
as you're leaving the house, and you have to kind of put that behind you, and for 4 or 5 hours you have to do something completely different. So it does take a lot of courage to follow your dreams, but it's
mm.
so worth it in the end. It's so
Yeah,
worth it in the end, because you're not doing it just for yourself. In most cases, you're doing it for the family unit as well. And you can have a healthy balance. You just have to work on it.
yeah, yeah, totally. And that's what I've kind of found with my clients previously, is that if you almost imagine that you have a box, and the box is split into sort of few smaller boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Most people have the smaller boxes are their family,
Mm-hmm.
their friends, and their kids.
Mm-hmm.
But what would happen if the kids are all grown up and they have their own
Yeah.
life?
Yeah.
And then, you know, your friends, obviously they have their own lives as well, because, you know, people have, you know, their families. It's the box looks rather empty. And
Mm-hmm.
I've had plenty of clients, you know, job could be one of them, you know, but they have two little things that occupy their life, so that when something falls away, they feel like, what's now, what's the purpose for me to live? And that's where the
Mm-hmm.
sort of the empty nest, you know, syndrome, as they call it,
Yes.
has there. Or, you know, I have had people who get struggle with their mental health because
Mm-hmm.
all their life they have had this focus of having this amazing job, and then they've retired and they've gone, I have no purpose anymore,
Yeah.
because they've always constantly been living for other people
Yeah.
and other stuff, external stuff, but there is no little box for themselves, just them as a person, what's
Yeah.
important for them, what do they want to do, and having that time for themselves and knowing their worth and having the boundaries and all of those things.
Yeah. Exactly. So is that what you mean by not taking advice about you know, your dreams? Like it's got to be your dream, right?
So this is a quite bold statement, and obviously have some exceptions. But for example, so my background has been that, like I said, mentioned quickly, I went through, several years where I was homeless. I was, sofa hopping. I had a, mother who couldn't, who was very unstable, couldn't support me. I didn't have a father. So I had a really difficult childhood. And when I was about 16, I kind of hit in my very sort of small, I didn't have much life experience when you're 16. I really hit the rock bottom. My relationship with my mum was really, really bad. I really struggled in school. I was academically, I was known as a stupid kid. And I wasn't very good with English, but yet I knew that I wanted something better for myself. And I knew that I wanted to move countries. So I was ridiculed for telling my teachers and my school peers that I wanted to go to UK, and then later on that I want to study law because I was known as a stupid kid. So realistically, there was no chance for me to do all of these things. And I was told several times that you will never succeed because, all of these things, reality is this. And even when I got older, and my sort of my ex-husband said to me, "You cannot study law in a foreign country because you're a woman, you're a foreigner, and you're not very clever." I know. So
that's why he's an ex.
So obviously, me being Aries and very, very stubborn, I did all of these things anyway. I went against the norm. I moved to the UK on my own with just £42 in my pocket, and learned the language really here. And I went to uni. I went part-time uni. I went through it. It took me 8 years to become a lawyer. By that time, I was actually already a manager of a very large department. So I did all of these things. So my point really is that if I would have really listened to that advice, I would have never achieved any of these things.
That's right. You wouldn't have even made the first step.
No. And that is my thing. It's quite, we all take advice, and we all have these loved ones who want to give their advice, and they want the best for us. But their advice comes based on their their background, their limiting beliefs about life, and what they believe about society and so forth. So I've learned really hard way to not to take advice when I had true desire. I might, tell my husband that, this is what I'm planning to do, but this is my dream and I really need you on board, because I don't want to discuss it in a sense that, whether I should be doing it or not, because that's when the doubts come in, and then somebody will talk you out of it, and you will end up living in somebody else's dream.
Yeah.
So exactly. That's my kind of point that I'm trying to, try to make quite often, that, kind of be careful. Not that people are trying to be awful to you and give you bad advice. It's just their advice comes based on their own stuff.
Their own world, right? Their own world, what they like, what they didn't like. A lot of people can give advice, but only the person living the life knows what they really want. And just as you said, and I was like that. I was later in life figuring out that I didn't want the life I'd had before, the work life that I'd had before. So it was up to me to create a new work life, no matter what it took. So yeah, you're right. So what would you say is the first step that women need to take to have a limitless life?
So what I've learned from kind of working with so many women and just so many people as a therapist, as a life coach, and now, as a business coach, is that 90% of our sort of wonkiness, as I like to call it, really comes from the relationship that we have ourselves. Because if we really start listening to people, they often say things like, "I'm not good enough," or "I am, I'm imposter," or I'm not good at this or that. So there is this "I am" statement attached to a lot of these things. And what I've realized that this makes people and businesses quite wonky. So this is really effectively their foundation. So if you strengthen that foundation, that relationship that you have with yourself, you starting to know what your worth is. You starting to put boundaries in place. You starting to really realize that actually I am important because, and it's not a selfish thing, because if you are doing the stuff for yourself and strengthening that foundation, you are great in a workplace. You are much better as for your kids. And what are the things that you can actually teach your kids? The examples that you can give them. You are going to be so much better in a family environment. So, strengthening the foundation is something that I talk a lot about to my clients and have been for many years.
Yeah, really, it's all about knowing yourself, right? And understanding yourself deeply, like self-leadership. You have to lead yourself first before you can go in a different direction. And if you don't have that strength yourself, and sometimes we all fall back on that, the doubts and fears and so on, but you just have to keep reiterating that your core strengths and where you're going, even if you put it up on the vision board. Look at it on the days when you're not feeling so confident, you know what I mean? And I find that you really just have to push yourself, especially if you're an introvert. An introvert doesn't naturally just become the life of the party or the leader in a company, but but what that means is somebody who is like that gets their energy from having some space and time, whereas an extrovert gets that energy from the crowd and the people around them. So being an introvert and holding back a little bit sometimes isn't a bad thing. Some people are introverts, but nobody would know that because they don't know that inner working of that person, that when the party's over, they go home and they might read a book, or they're relaxed with yoga or something like that. Whereas the extroverts wanting to go to the next party, right? And staying out till 2 o'clock in the morning. So just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you can't be successful. You just have to know the difference and know yourself and have faith in yourself, I think, right?
Absolutely. I mean, things like working with these, fears and worries, and doing a lot of sort of inner work.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
whether it's journaling or whether it is there are obviously various exercises that people can do for their confidence. Really looking at their values and actually applying them to their life, doing more of the things that they truly want to do. And I'm talking about here sort of aside from their families, just actually doing something for themselves without that, just building that
that resilience in yourself, right? And almost say, okay, if I want to do this, try one thing on that path, even though you're scared to death to do it. For me, in university, it was public speaking. I had a huge fear of standing up in front of the class and presenting. It was just like almost mind-boggling that could I get through my whole degree without standing up in front of the class. Well, one professor, there was no way the whole class had to go through it. So there was no choice. You just had to find ways. And it was my husband who was able to help me through that. Like, he was more used to public speaking. And he told me how to get over that fear, how to focus on the back of the room at the beginning and then bring your eyes to the middle. And then when you feel more comfortable, single out a few people in the front row. Don't start out with those people in the front row right away. It'll scare you too much. And once somebody showed me the steps of how to do it, I think that took all that fear away. And once the fear is gone, you're very relaxed because you know your stuff, right? You just don't know how to do it in that particular environment.
Yeah.
So you can overcome anything if you allow your mind to take it on. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Totally, absolutely. And yeah, fear is something that also obviously is very important for
Mhm.
us to survive
Yes.
in situations
Yeah.
where we have to feel
Yeah.
afraid, you know, but it can also stop us. So that, and a lot of people unfortunately let in
Yeah.
themselves, you know, stopping.
So we're talking here about self-doubt. So how can women push through that self-doubt?
It's fear is such a funny little thing, because and I had this experience with fear, and I've worked with fear, you know, help people with phobias and various other things. But I remember having to do a zip wire ride. It was the longest zip wire ride in Europe. It's in North Wales, and you are strapped in and you go head first. So you're going down a hill
Ooh.
effectively head first. And in the middle of this, you're strapped in, you have no escape. In the middle of this zip wire ride, I kind of got panicky. But the thing is that there is nothing else I could have done than just gone downhill. And because obviously when you are afraid, your mind goes to fight or flight, and your body tenses.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what I did was I just relaxed. I literally just,
Mm-hmm.
I was breathing out. And your mind cannot stay in that fearful state when you're relaxed, because
Right.
you cannot have two opposite feelings at the very same time. And just as I did that, I was like, oh, the fear just went.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had this realization that it was just this story that I created
Yeah.
in my mind. And obviously, when I went through doing sort of my therapy training and NLP training, you know, I realized that there is just so much we can do, and that fear is just something, you know, if you have a plan, and if you sometimes just breathe and relax. Obviously, breathing techniques are amazingly great for that. Or you know, there are various other techniques, but the quickest way is just that just do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And once you take the first step,
Yeah.
because you are going against that, almost what your brain is telling you to do. Again, your brain cannot have two opposite feelings at the very same time. So if you just take the first step.
That's really interesting to know. So really, you got to relax your brain and trust, right? The trust in whatever is scaring you. Trust that somebody's taking care of it. If it's a physical thing, right? Like if you're bungee jumping or something like that, that nobody's going to do that or set it up so that you're going to hurt yourself. Like, so you, even though you might have that fear, if you just relax and go with the plan that the bungee jumping experts tell you to do, then everything's going to be okay. Yeah, that
Well, it's
trust
obviously
part.
it's obviously not as easy as it sounds always,
No,
but
no,
most of the time 80% of what we're fearing will never happen, because we just
that's right.
created this story in ourselves.
Yeah.
Like in the UK, you don't have poisonous snakes or poisonous
Right.
spiders, but we can see the teeniest spider and absolutely freak out.
Yeah.
And really it's just your brain has created the story in your mind.
Yeah, exactly.
So a lot of these
Exactly.
fears are just absolute self-made,
Yeah.
you know,
Self-made.
things that we
That's
just
right.
create for ourselves. But obviously things like if your body just naturally tenses when you are afraid. So just if you just, you know, relax your body, that can in itself relax the fear, because your body cannot you have a mind and body connection. So if you change your body, like if you are very, very afraid. So I had women come into me for confidence, and I asked them, what do you want to change? And they're like, you know, their body language was very much like, oh, I want to be confident. And I was like, okay, put your shoulders back, stand up straight.
Mm-hmm.
it's just you have a mind and body connection. You cannot be confident like that,
That's
but you will
right.
be much more confident in that.
Yes.
So it's just these little things that obviously you need to be practiced, not just wait until you're afraid and then do it, because your mind, goes into fight or flight straight away. But if
Yeah.
you practice them first, it's so much easier just to take that first step.
Yeah, and I think you have to put it in perspective too, don't you think, that there's a first time for something for everyone. Like you might admire a very accomplished speaker, but they all at some point had a first time when they were a speaker, and they were probably terrified and afraid. Like they stare out from the stage and see 500 people and think, what the heck am I doing here? I'm not good enough. My message is not powerful enough, or and they go into that fear mode. But once they get over that first one, and then they do a second and a third and a fourth and a fifth, then they are more relaxed into it. They give a better performance. The fear goes away, etc., etc. But everybody that you see, like even the best actors and actresses, they weren't always like that. If you looked at their very first movie, you'd think, wow, that's them when their first movie. That's pretty bad. You know what I mean? But you hone your skills as you go along. So you don't start out as being the expert. You gain that through the knowledge that you have and the training that you've done and so on and so forth. So I think when you are starting out and you want that limitless life, you have to do it one step at a time and don't get too far ahead of yourself so that you give up because it seems impossible. It's too far away. Like right now, Wimbledon's going on, right? And you look at those tennis players, but they've been training for 15 years to be that good. They didn't just wake up one day, go on the court and win. They practiced and practiced and practiced and got better and better and better, found out their weaknesses and made those into strengths and so on and so forth. Then they worked on the mental side of the game, because it's a very lonely sport. You're out there, it's just you, right? And whatever you do is on you. You can't blame anybody else in the singles. You know what I mean? It's all about you. And you can have good days and bad days. No tennis player has ever won 100% of the tournament entered. So you have to put it in perspective. And I know we're not professional tennis players, but it does apply to life in general, right?
Yeah.
If you don't take that first step and sort of meet that fear dead on, then you'll never start that limitless life. You'll never get on rung one, so
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there are many techniques out there that people can do, from, just go into YouTube, there are so many techniques, breathing techniques, NLP techniques, visualizations, journaling, you name it, there are. But at the end of the day, you can have all the tools in the world, but if you don't take that small step at first, you still don't apply any of the stuff.
That's
so,
right.
taking the steps still kind of
Yeah.
that.
Now, as we mentioned, women have a lot of responsibilities, right? So how do they juggle that to get to that limitless life without being really stressed out?
Yeah, I think it's just, again, doing it in sort of small steps. And I still come back to sort of strengthening your foundation, kind of knowing your worth, and realizing that it's so important that you take time out for yourself, whatever, and doing the things that really matter to you. For some people is going for a walk, just going for a walk. And I have had women who have very busy, work life and family life, saying, "Oh, I don't have time to go for a walk." And I go and I kind of ask, "Okay, how long do you normally go for a walk, if you can?" "Oh, an hour." But so they think that because they don't have always time for an hour, they don't have time for any of it, so they don't do any of it. But what if you have time for 10 minutes? And it's still kind of doing it in smaller ways, but also having a good communication in your family to have the support network, like you mentioned, for them to realize actually that all parts need to work for this family union to be very, very successful. So a mom needs to take out some time for themselves. A dad needs to take out, or maybe it's mom and mom, or maybe it's dad and dad, whichever, you know, unity you have, each parties still need to do some of the stuff that is just really important, just themselves.
Yeah.
And then you are so much stronger, so much, you know, you don't have that resentment, or you don't have, oh, I wish I would have done that kind of attitude, because you are taking some time. So small steps, still working on your foundation, having that good communication for everyone to understand that everyone needs to be well, because you can't pour from an empty cup. And a lot of women do that. You know, I have friends all around me who have small kids, and they often really struggling with that. Also realizing that you are important. You are really important, and it's not selfish.
That's right. Yes. Women have to get over the idea that taking care of yourself is selfish. The other thing that women are not good at is asking for help.
Yeah.
You know, like, you have to ask your children for help too. Can you help mommy tidy up your room? You know, like, so they start and they do maybe 3 things and then they run off. Well, maybe next time when you ask them, they might do 5 or 6 things.
Yeah.
And the next time you ask them, they might be doing 10 or 12, and then they might be doing it on their own, so that you're not doing it. You know, but if you don't ask them, then they're going to play with their toys or go out with their friends or whatever they're going to do, right? So, you know, it's not a bad thing to ask your family or your friends or whoever in your time of need to get yourself to where you feel relaxed and you can move on and not be stressed out all the time. It's not a bad thing to ask for help at all.
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I've definitely seen, I haven't had that conversation with somebody before, that, you know, I know their kids are very, very small, but it's okay to ask your kid, like, you know, if you take this toy out, you have to put it back before you take the next toy out, or something along those lines. It's just a good foundation again for the kids when they're growing up, and it helps mom, it helps dad, it helps the whole family unity.
Yeah. And it helps the kids to be responsible, right? And be in charge of the things that they can be in charge of. So now, children being children, they will test you. Does mommy really mean that? So you have to be consistent with whatever you're going to ask for the help. You know, if you say you have, you know, before you take out your next toy, you have to put the other one back. Well, if you only do it once, that's not going to help. But once the child, like 4 or 5 times, they understand that you really mean it, then they're going to follow and do it. And you know, and usually there's a reward at the end of it for them, right? Especially if they're very young children. And they're proud of themselves when they do it. So it's their own, you'll help building their own self-esteem too.
Absolutely. Yeah, building their foundation up.
Yeah, you're building
when they so that, you know, when they're, you know, older, then they already have that strong foundation, instead of, you know, sort of, obviously, as a therapist, you know, I saw so many people that came to me because of that. You know, their foundation, the wonky foundation, went all the way back when they were children. And it's just these patterns that I started to see, which is why I talk about the foundation, building up your foundation or strengthening your foundation, which is your mindset, your self-esteem, your worth, you know, feeling your worthiness. That, you know, obviously now I talk this to adults, but I wish it would start from a very early age, so that we would have a so much healthier society when they grow up as adults.
Yeah, but in your particular case, you had to break the pattern of your young childhood, right? You couldn't sort of reflect on that and say, yeah, I want to go back and be that person, because that wasn't a good atmosphere for you. And you weren't a confident person, and you were told that you were stupid, right? So you don't want to go back there. So sometimes if you've had a bad sort of self-start, you have to break that and start over, which is that's pretty hard to do, right? But if you're determined enough, you can conquer anything. So you just have to say, that was my life then, and I'm starting on a new life. And it's the life that I'm going to design, not somebody's going to design it for me. Because we put sort of categories against people. He's really good looking. He's stupid. He's smart. She's model material, whatever. Or, oh, she'll never go anywhere. She look at her glasses or whatever, or she's too nerdy or whatever. Like, it's other people's labels that they try to put on you. So you have to create your own self-worth and self-image and confidence and all that, and rebuild yourself up. If you came from where you were, you have to start over and create a new person, right? The person you want to be.
And the whole sort of my limitless story has always been that it doesn't matter where you come from, it doesn't matter what has happened to you. The fact that you went through all of that stuff doesn't mean that you can't. It means that you can. So and that's why the utter desire and building up your strengthening your foundation and feeling fear and doing it anyway. And if you have a dream, just go for it anyway. Regardless what other people are saying. So
exactly. So what practical tips would you advise women to take to get to this limitless situation, that where you are truly limitless? What things can you do on a daily basis?
So obviously, again, starting with your foundation, because that's the really core, when we strengthen that up. But I really I've seen sort of, and I've read so many sort of what's the word, so many research that has done around visualization. And so that's something that I teach my clients all the time. There's this particular visualization that it's kind of mix and match with a martial art technique called Aikido. I don't know whether you've come across that, but basically Aikido believes that the sort of strength comes from the core of your center of your body. So I always ask my clients to close their eyes and then imagine, let's say they want more confidence or they want more self-esteem, that they focus on the center of the body. And let's say if a confidence had a color, what color would it be? And then they come up with a particular color, maybe a shape, almost create something that they almost see it as a confidence. And they put that almost in the center of the body. And then they just visualize that that's where their confidence is. And it's so weird, because I've seen that with my clients. They come to my office, they are like that. And when they close their eyes, they put their confidence in the center of the body, and they naturally go this. And after a little while, I normally do it with a mirror. I ask them to open their eyes. And I said, what do you notice about your body language? And they're like, oh, actually, I feel more calmer. I feel more centered. I feel more confident. Oh, I can do stuff. And they, we have that conversation. What would you do right now? What is so important to you? And I kind of have this empowering conversation with them to a point when they often like, oh, I remember I really wanted to do this, or maybe I should go and join a gym, or whatever it is. So visualization in any way is really, really, really powerful. I mean, top athletes are doing visualizations,
Yes.
and it's
Yeah.
and obviously it's easier to do it with somebody's help. So whether it's a therapist or coach or somebody else, or if you don't want to do it with somebody's help, there are again so many tools available on YouTube with various sort of building up your self-esteem, building up your confidence. This is all your foundation, and knowing your worth. So visualizations are great for it. Obviously, journaling exercises are really, really good. There is so many things out there that people can do to build up their confidence, their self-esteem, their self-worth. But I personally really rate any form of meditations, like hypnotic meditations for confidence, self-esteem, visualization exercises for that, or journaling. These are the kind of the three things that I personally, I've been doing them for years. Obviously, I still go back to them myself as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice, Laura. Absolutely. So thank you so much for being on our show today. I understand you have a special offer for our listeners today. If you could tell us about that.
Yes, so we have actually a little mini program for entrepreneurs, and this is called You Are Limitless as well. It's a mini program to really get people going with their entrepreneurial journey, or maybe just boosting it up a bit. So this is just at the moment at a small price of £49. It just gets people going. We have actually a lot of mini programs just to help people kind of get going. It's that first step, because if you hire if I do a proper sort of coaching consultant work, it's a heavy on, and it's obviously price tag is very, very different. So part of our business is very much of helping entrepreneurs to actually take that first step, and without breaking a bank. So we're all about empowering entrepreneurs.
Well, that's fantastic. So the link to this program at £49 will be on our website, fabfempreneurship.com/podcast. Look for Laura Lohk's episode, and you'll find the link right there. And on our for the audio version and also the video version, we'll also put it up on our YouTube channel, the link to the special. So thank you so much, Laura. It's been a lot of fun talking to you, and kudos for you for achieving all that you have achieved from your start in Estonia. It's fantastic to hear your story.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.